What's up, Raider Nation? It's your boy S back with another video. Today we're talking about Antonio Pierce. Should the Raiders fire him after this season? There's a lot of buzz about this. Some rumors say Pierce's job is 100% safe, while others think the Raiders might be looking for a brand new coaching staff. But from what most reports are saying, it looks like Pierce is staying, and the team plans to keep him for another season. Now here's the big question. Is that the right decision? Should the Raiders really stick with him, or would it be better to let him go? That's what I want to dive into today. This season has been all over the place. Let's face it, we're on a 9-game losing streak. That's hard to ignore. What makes it worse is that some of those games were definitely winnable. Take the Chiefs, for example. We lost to them twice this season. The first game, we were just 7 points away. The second game, only 2 points. Then there's yesterday's game against the Buccaneers. Our defense forced 3 turnovers, yet we still lost. The problem isn't just losing, it's how we're losing. In so many games, things feel poorly managed. A good example is what happened yesterday. Antonio Pierce challenged a play with Trey Tucker, but Tucker was obviously out of bounds. These kinds of mistakes make you wonder, is Pierce the right guy to lead this team? That play was as clear as day to anyone watching. Trey Tucker was out of bounds, no question. But for some reason, Antonio Pierce still threw the challenge flag. Now, one bad challenge might not seem like a big deal, but this isn't the first time. Pierce has made several questionable challenges where it was obvious there was no need, and it's not just challenges. The Raiders keep struggling before halftime, giving up way more points than they score. This feels like mismanagement on the field. When you combine that with a 9-game losing streak, you have to wonder, is Antonio Pierce really the right coach for this team moving forward? Or should the Raiders start looking for someone else? There are options out there. What if we found a strong offensive mind, someone like a passing game coordinator or an offensive coordinator? Guys like Zach Taylor or Kevin O'Connell, who started as offensive play callers, have built winning teams. Maybe they have coordinators on their staff who could be a fit for us. The Raiders are likely to draft a quarterback soon, and having the right coach to develop that player is key. Sure, we could win a few of our next games. All 4 upcoming matchups look winnable. For example, we're playing the Falcons on Monday Night Football next week. But the bigger question is, do we stick with Pierce or take a chance on fresh leadership? Next up, we've got some interesting matchups for the Raiders. First, we play the Jacksonville Jaguars. With Trevor Lawrence out for the season, this is a winnable game for us. Then we face the New Orleans Saints. Their quarterback, Derek Carr, recently broke his left hand, his non-throwing hand, so it's unclear if he'll play in 3 weeks. Finally, we end the season against the Chargers. Let's be honest, they haven't been great this year. It'll probably be a low-scoring game, which means the Raiders have a real chance to win. Because of these matchups, we might not end up with a top 2 draft pick. If we win 1 or 2 games, we could drop to the 8th or 9th pick. That makes the decision about our next quarterback even more important. There are a lot of names being talked about in this draft class, guys like Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, and Drew Aller, who's been getting a lot of hype recently, but most of these quarterbacks are developmental guys. They have potential, but they'll need the right coach to help them grow. The big question is Antonio Pierce that coach? Can he take a young quarterback and turn them into a star? Or should the Raiders find someone else who specializes in quarterback development? On top of that, we're still stuck in a 9-game losing streak. That alone makes it hard to ignore the need for change. Let's be real, we've been getting beat badly in some of these games. Look at the Steelers game, for example, or even the Bengals. Sure, the Bengals game was close at first, but they eventually pulled away. The same thing happened with the Dolphins. And while I think Patrick Graham is a really good coach, things just aren't clicking right now. He's had some great moments in multiple games, but overall, the team feels mismanaged. Mistakes keep piling up and it's hard to ignore. That said, it's not like the players aren't giving their best for Antonio Pierce. They're showing up and putting in work. For example, Holmes, our safety, has been stepping up as a starter over the last few weeks. He might not be a full-time starter, but he's been making plays. And Kayvon Chasen, he had an interception against the Bucs and has shown flashes of brilliance. The Raiders have a tough decision to make with Antonio Pierce. If you ask me, I think it's time to move on. And that's tough because Patrick Graham runs an elite defensive scheme. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. I'd love for the Raiders to keep Graham, but here's the problem. If we bring in a new head coach, they'll probably want to replace the entire staff, including Graham. That's just how it works in the NFL. If we fire Antonio Pierce, we're likely letting go of Patrick Graham too, and that's tough to swallow. Graham is an elite defensive coordinator, and Scott Turner, on the offensive side, has shown improvement as well. Let's talk about Scott Turner for a second. While the Raiders aren't putting up huge numbers, we're scoring around 10, 13, or 20 points per game, the offense has looked better under him. We're seeing more drives getting into the red zone or the opposing team's territory. The problem? We don't have a solid quarterback to finish the job. Without a reliable QB, it's hard to turn those opportunities into points. That's been the story of the last 4 weeks. Still, Turner has made progress, and if the Raiders decide to stick with Antonio Pierce, they're also likely keeping Scott Turner. But if it's up to me, I think the Raiders should move on from Pierce and explore other coaching options. There are some great offensive minds available right now. For example, Clay Kubiak with the Saints showed promise early in the season, though the offense dipped after a few weeks. Then there's Bobby Slowick from the Texans, who's seen as a strong coaching candidate despite some ups and downs this year. The Raiders need to seriously consider if sticking with Pierce is the right move, or if they should bring in someone new to lead the team forward. I still believe Bobby Slowick has the potential to be a great coach. His current struggles are likely tied to his quarterback situation. It's a process that might take a year or two to smooth out. Then there's Cliff Kingsbury, another name people are keeping an eye on. Some head coaches like Mike McCarthy might even get fired soon, opening up new options. If the Raiders want to consider a defensive-minded coach, big names like Bill Belichick could be in the mix. Or someone like Jesse Minter from the Chargers, who's highly regarded as a great coach. The Raiders have plenty of options to consider, and in my opinion, it might be time to move on from Antonio Pierce. I'd prioritize bringing in an offensive-minded coach who can call plays and develop a new quarterback. That said, I understand why the team might want to stick with Pierce, especially if he builds a strong offensive staff around him. Here's the thing, if Pierce doesn't win another game this season, he has to go. It's not just about winning though. Many fans want the Raiders to keep losing to secure a top 2 draft pick. But even when you look past the losses, the team's performances often look unorganized and frustrating to watch. Of course, a big part of the problem is the quarterback position. How do you win games or show competitiveness when your QB is struggling so much? Speaking of quarterbacks, there's some good news about Aidan O'Connell. According to Ian Rappaport, an MRI confirmed he only has a bone bruise in his knee, not a torn ACL as many feared. That's a relief, especially after seeing him carted off the field in an air cast. The best part? O'Connell could actually be ready to play against the Falcons on Monday Night Football. I want to see Aidan O'Connell play, plain and simple. These next 4 weeks should be his chance to show us what he's got. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind giving Carter Bradley a shot during this time. Now I'm not sold on Desmond Ridder as our quarterback. I don't think he's the answer, and even if he improves, he's probably 2 years away from being where he needs to be. On the other hand, Aidan O'Connell can at least play within a structured system. Yes, he struggled against the Buccaneers, but I still think he deserves more chances. Carter Bradley is a rookie, so he's bound to struggle, but you never know. Rookies can sometimes surprise us, especially if they have a good offensive coordinator to guide them. O'Connell might have his limitations, but I expect him to play at least a couple more games this season. That said, I'd love to see what Bradley could bring to the table. Antonio Pierce was asked about the quarterback situation and confirmed that Desmond Ridder would play if O'Connell isn't available. So it's unlikely we'll see Bradley unless something unexpected happens, like Ridder taking a big hit and coming out for a drive. If Bradley does step in, even for a brief moment, it could be interesting to see what he can do. As for the draft, I know a lot of people want the Raiders to take a quarterback, but let's be honest, this draft class isn't particularly strong. There's hype around guys like Shedeur Sanders, but many scouts I've spoken to don't even see him as a first-round pick. Some don't rank him among the top 3 quarterbacks right now. Other names like Jalen Milroe and Garrett Nussmeier are also getting attention, but opinions are mixed. With this shaky quarterback class, I think it's worth seeing what O'Connell can do before making a big move in the draft. What do you think? Should the Raiders give O'Connell the spotlight or focus on the draft? Drop your thoughts in the comments, leave a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.